this March 15th edition of the Courier Paperboyz. I'm sports editor Doug Newhoff. This morning we've got our Final Four lineup of Jim Sullivan, Jim Nelson, and Nick Pateros. Let's kick this off, guys, with a simple question. Is it time for a shot clock in high school basketball?
It could very well be, but you're not going to see it. A lot of that discussion started after the semifinal game between Pleasant Valley and West Des Moines Valley, Pleasant Valley, West Des Moines Valley. Great ball game until we got to the second overtime, and Valley chose to hold the ball for the last shot, which meant that point guard spent 3 minutes and 50 seconds dribbling, and then finally made a move and scored. PV didn't really do much to try to prevent that. The thinking was that they couldn't handle Turner Scott, so they were just going to let him dribble it out and hope for the best. And in talking to some people down there, they would like to see it, some would like to see it, but I'm told that it's not going to happen for whatever reason. Expenses, just a dislike for that sort of format, that sort of thing. But there are other states that do have it.
I'm surprised that the conversation has just come up at the state tournament. I mean, I've been watching all year 42 to 40 basketball games, and it's not just boys, it's girls. I just think it's time to consider some way to encourage more offense in the high school game.
Well, I think some of it starts with defense. You look at that Pleasant Valley game, get out and defend the guy with the ball instead of letting him stall for 4 minutes. And I think the biggest problem with the shot clock is, Sully and I were talking about earlier, you have hometown clock operators that already are struggling on dead ball, end of quarter situations. You're going to bring in another component when you add if somebody's getting a shot off before the shot clock, and I think that could really become a hassle on some of the day-to-day games. You still saw a game at the girls' state tournament where Pocahontas scored 100 points and Cherokee had 80 or 90 or something crazy like that. So it's all style of play. But if you want to do something about stalling, go out there and defend somebody.
There's nothing worse than watching a high school basketball game where they just stand out there and hold the ball.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
One thing that was brought up the other day when I was talking to some coaches was changing the closely guarded rule. And making sure that, actually the suggestion was if they're not going to call it 6 feet, make it a 12-foot rule. And that way you don't have to get that close and they'll still make the closely guarded call. Something like that may help. I'm not sure if 12 feet is exactly the answer, but make sure that a team has to defend. This has been a problem. This was actually a problem going back in college ball to the pre-shot clock era where teams would not defend. And you had the sight of Michael Jordan with the ball in his hip for the better part of the second half in an ACC title game. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that might help the problem. I think that would be more doable than any sort of shot clock, because I think more coaches would be willing to accept that.
I hope that they come up with some solution. That we have so many really multi-skilled, talented athletes playing the game these days, as we saw in the boys' state tournament and the girls' state tournament. And I'd like to see them showcase their skills a little bit more at the offensive end and what they're able to, the way the game is kind of played a lot of times now. Let's move over to college wrestling. Congrats to Wartburg College for winning another Division III national championship. They've got something really special going on up there. This week it's the Division I Nationals. Nellie, you're headed out there to New York, so give us kind of a brief overview of what we might see and some of the storylines we might want to follow.
Well, the big one, I'll start with UNI. They got 5 qualifiers. Dylan Peters, Josh Albert, Bryce Steyert, Cooper Moore, and Blaze Cabell. And, they're going out there. I think all 5 guys have, they've had some success. I think all 5, you got to string matches together. There's not going to be any easy matches, but you look at Dylan Peters. He's been on the podium. He's got an opponent in the first round that he's beaten already twice this year, and he's got to adapt. He had a knee injury early in the year, and it's limited him a little bit to what he can do. But that's a guy. He's got all the talent in the world. I would expect to see him make a run. Josh Albert's had some up and downs as a freshman, and so's Bryce Steyert, both guys, but they're both very confident individuals, and so you like them. Cooper Moore's been ranked as high as 6th in the nation this year. He's not that high right now, and he's been a step close. Last year he was on the round at 12 and lost, and now Blaze Cabell's the same situation. I think he was in the round of 12 last year, which is a victory away from being an All-American. Both those guys, I would say Peters and Moore and Cobble are probably the best bets to see All-American status this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if any subset of those 5 would be on the podium. And then, you look at Iowa, we got the hometown kid, Brandon Sorensen is going to be the number 2 seed at 149 pounds. I expect, he's favored to get back into the national final, or get into the national finals for the first time as a sophomore, and, he'll get a rematch against Penn State's Zane Rutherford that he lost. That was his only loss this year, was in the Big Ten finals. And Iowa, if the things go right, Iowa's going to be in the race with Penn State. Penn State's got 3 or 4 real good hammers that are going to score a lot of points, but their other qualifiers are you never know what's going to happen. So if Iowa can match them, have a couple of guys wrestle up above their seeds, Iowa's going to be in that hunt there. You got to like Thomas Gilman at 25 and Corey Clark at 33 and Sammy Brooks and his mullet that created all kinds of waves with his interview at the Big Ten championships after he won. That basically propelled him from being a 6 or 7 seed in the NCAA tournament to a number 2 seed. I don't know if the mullet did, but the finally groomed mullet, he's number 2 seed. So you like some things. They got hurt a little bit. Sam Stoll qualified at heavyweight, but he got hurt in I want to say in the Big Ten, not the Big Ten, before the Big Ten tournament, and against. I'm drawing a blank here, but he got hurt and he's a little banged up. So we wonder how much they're going to get out of their heavyweight. But there's a good thing. And then you look. Let's quickly turn to Iowa State. They've got 5 qualifiers. Earl Hall has been on the podium at 33. He did that 2 years ago at 125. He's probably their best guy, I bet. And you like Tanner Weatherman at 65, another senior, a fourth year guy. He's been to 4 national tournaments. It's been close, and you like him. And I think a wild card, you're going to look at Patrick Downey. He beat out the Waterloo West boy Marcus Harrington for the 197 pound. He's a junior college national champ. He's a world junior champ, I believe. He's a different thing. He's only wrestled 7 or 8 matches this year, but he qualified through the Big 12 tournament. He's a wild card at that 197 pounds. He's probably still getting into his best shape. You wonder what's going to happen there at 97. And then the big story too is it's the first time ever Madison Square Garden. It's the most famous venue in the world, and it's going to be interesting to get out there. I'm excited to kind of get there tomorrow and take a walk around it. So it's going to be a great tournament. It always is.
All right, very good. Let's talk a little NCAA basketball. It's tournament time. We've got UNI, Iowa, and Iowa State in the big dance. Let's kind of break down these first round matchups. First game up is Iowa State versus Ionia. Thursday at 1 p.m. in the Midwest region at Denver. Iowa State's 21-11. They got a 4 seed. Iona is 22-10 and a 13 seed. Looks statistically like the Gales are a decent offensive team. They've got a go-to guy in this A.J. English who averages 22 point something per game and 5 rebounds and 5 assists. So he's a pretty balanced player all around, does a lot of things all around for him. Defensively, their opponents shoot 42% overall and 36% from 3, and doesn't look like they're a great rebounding team. What do you guys know or see about this matchup?
Well, this is the team that knocked Monmouth out of the NCAA tournament, essentially, with the victory in the MAC championship game. A lot of analysts, and you can take this for what it's worth, believe that Iona is going to knock off Iowa State because, 1, they'll outscore them, and 2, Iowa State's not playing that well right now. I don't know. George Niang is playing his best basketball of his life at this point, I think. He was tremendous in the Big 12 tournament game against Oklahoma. Didn't get enough help, as it turned out. And, I think he's going to be very, very tough for Iowa to deal with, assuming he stays out of foul trouble. The wild card in this whole thing, well, 2 of them actually. Of course, one Monte Morris. Monte Morris has been a rock for Iowa State for the better part of his career. He's struggling now with a shoulder injury, and he seemed to be affected by that, not just physically but mentally against Oklahoma. They need him to score, and they need him to do what he does. And then, of course, there's good old Jameel McKay, who has been playing better lately. But what will he bring to the table in this game? You would hope he'd bring a presence inside, shot blocking defensively, and then cleaning the boards and scoring some. So I would favor Iowa State in this one. I think that Niang's going to carry them at least to the next round, and then we'll see.
Well, just with a casual glance, it would appear that Iowa State's played a significantly tougher schedule than Iona has. But okay, let's move on to Friday. We've got UNI and Iowa both playing Friday in different locations. And the Panthers are 22-12, seeded 11th. They drew 6-seeded and 20-12 Texas. They'll play about 9 p.m. Friday in Oklahoma City. Sully, you'll be there for that, so give us your take on this game.
It's another interesting matchup. Texas is a team I've kind of liked from the beginning. They're young, but they're big. They've been up and down a little bit. They split with Iowa State, lost in the Big 12 tournament by 14, I think it was, to Baylor. They have a very, very good balanced big lineup. Isaiah Taylor, the point guard, is all Big 12. You have Prince Ebay, the Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12. And they also have a little bit of a wild card with injury in terms of Cameron Ridley, 6'10" guy who's missed something like 20 games with a fractured foot, I believe it is. They expect him to come back. They just don't know how long it's going to be. From UNI standpoint, the whole question is, of course, how can they match up with their size? And I think they need one of their shooters to get going a little bit better, specifically Bohannon and or Paul Jesperson.
Preferably more than one.
Yes, and the other key, of course, will be the matchup Wes Washburn against Isaiah Taylor. That's, I think, the likely one-on-one matchup. But overall, we've all seen Ben Jacobson's teams enough to know that he's going to switch some things up. He's going to get help down low whenever he can and make it tough on Texas, as tough as he can on Texas to score in there. And it might be up to the Longhorns to start hitting some perimeter shots.
Yeah, with their size around the basket, I would guess rebounding is going to be a key issue for UNI in this game. Texas will probably pressure a little bit. Their ball handling will be very important, and they've got to make threes. So
Yeah, this is, and Jacobson talked about this extensively yesterday, it's reflective of who Shaka Smart is as a human being and a coach, but it's not quite the same sort of team that we saw at VCU. They don't quite have the same sort of roster, but they will pressure, they will go to the boards hard, they will play hard.
Well, I was wondering, what's the Coach Jacobson's thought about, the Valley tournament's been over for a week. You kind of get out of rhythm without a game for how many days will it be?
12 days.
12 days?
Yeah.
You played, every 3 or 4 days here for 3 months. Does that play a factor? It doesn't seem like they've affected on previous NCAA tournaments, but what's his thought about, having such a long layoff?
He said that it doesn't concern him very much, that over time they've learned how to adapt to it. The first couple of appearances you and I made in the NCAA tournament when this happened, they practiced them pretty hard. But he's sort of backed off that a little bit. They still work out, they still lift and so on, but they will back off a little bit during the week between the Valley Final and Selection Sunday, and then pick it up again a little bit in the days leading up to their first round games. So he isn't particularly concerned about it. Texas is in roughly the same boat, so it's kind of a push that way. I would guess it's not going to be a factor as much as some other things that might happen in this game.
what's waiting on the other side of this game for the winner?
Texas A&M probably. I don't remember who the Aggies play, but that's the likely matchup. Of course, all the people down around there are talking about it's given done deal Longhorns versus Aggies, and
Right.
and just get your guns out, I guess. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think UNI has better than a puncher's chance in this one.
Sure.
With the teams they played and the things they faced this year, they're not going to be fazed by a lot.
No, and their prep will be as good as anybody's, and their game plan will be solid if they can execute it. I mean, we've seen it time and time again with Ben Jacobson teams. I mean, they find a way to be competitive and to dictate how they want the game to play out a little bit. So I presume they'll find a way to do some of that again. Iowa got a number 7 seed with their 21-10 record. They play 10th-seeded Temple, who's 21-11. That game's at 2 p.m. or 2:10 p.m. Friday in the South Region. In Brooklyn, Temple isn't exactly a prolific offensive team. They shoot 41% overall, 34% from behind the line. They average 68.7 points per game. They don't get to the free throw line as much as their opponents do. They're getting out-rebounded on the season. They only have 3 players averaging in double figures, and their leading scorer averages about 15.5 points. It appears it's mostly about defense for the Owls. Their opponents are only shooting 42% overall and 31% behind the line. You guys looked at this game much?
I'm still trying to find what went wrong with Iowa. They're not playing very well, and it's interesting because how well they played early on, and now it seems like they're so far out of rhythm. It's hard to watch. But yeah, hopefully they can figure it out. They had time to figure it out. You can tell Fran's frustrated. He's been taking it out on our brethren down there. But I'd like to cover him on a weekly basis, or cover them, on a daily basis. But it's obviously some frustration there with these guys. Can they figure it out? Because it's a team that's, I think, built to maybe make a run in this tournament. They've got all the pieces, but I think frustration has just taken over lately, and maybe they're trying to do too much, or maybe simplify too much. But I like Iowa in this one. I think they're going to win it. You know, like I said, I think they're built to make a win, and hopefully they figured some things out heading out to Brooklyn.
Seems a little bit like last year, or, you know, in previous years, they kind of limped into the tournament last year, they kind of did, and then they had that first round draw, I can think, against Davidson, handled them pretty well, and then it was a question of what you can do after that, and I think that might be the case again this year. I think they should be able to handle Temple pretty well, but then after that, can you beat a Villanova, and that remains to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if Temple's defense is as good as it appears statistically, and they can take Utah out of the game to some extent, you know, it could be interesting. I'm not counting on the Hawkeyes for too much these days, the way they've been playing, so we'll see. Let's talk a little bit women's basketball. You and I lost a tough game in the Missouri Valley Championship on Sunday, so they're not going to be in the NCAA tournament, but they did get an automatic berth in the WNIT by virtue of being the regular season champs in the Valley. So they're headed to Nebraska on Thursday for a first-round WNIT game. What's that one look like?
Well, it's kind of an interesting matchup. Back when you and I qualified for the NCAA tournament for the first time, they played Nebraska, and you and I was a 16 seed, Nebraska a 1 seed. The coaches, Connie Yori and Tanya Warren, were former teammates together at Creighton. The only 2 players from Creighton's women's basketball program that have their numbers retired. So you've got some history there. As far as this particular matchup, Nebraska's kind of stumbling into the postseason, you could say. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. Granted, that's against quality Big Ten opponents. They are 5-5, or I mean 9-9, 500 in conference play. They've got a really good three-point shooter in this Natalie Romeo. I think she has over 100 threes on the year. 41% success rate from three-point range, and then they've got a good inside presence with this Jessica Shepard, I think is her name, for Nebraska. So they'll have a lot for you and I to handle, but I think you and I might just want this game more. It seems like they're playing better basketball going into the WNIT. You've got 4 fifth-year seniors that have meant a lot to the program that are in that starting lineup, and you know, I think, you know, if you look at motivation as far as the WNIT goes, this might be a UNI team that might have a little more to play for than Nebraska at this point.
How do you explain the fact that Iowa gets a home game, Drake gets a home game, UNI gets a road game?
I don't know if there's any way you can explain what goes on with the home games in the WNIT. Last year I wouldn't have thought UNI would be hosting, and they hosted against Missouri. I think sometimes it pans out to what days the hosts can be available. Their first round games are it's kind of a unique deal too, where they play anywhere from Wednesday to Friday. So I think Nebraska probably put in a bid. They weren't going to have Creighton play them again. I don't know if Drake played them earlier in the year, so then UNI was geographically maybe the closest team they could send out to Lincoln for a game out in Nebraska.
All right, very good. Another women's basketball team that's turning some heads right now is up at Waverly with Wartburg College. I mean, they just keep finding a way to win. Now they're in the D3 Final Four for the first time in school history. Pretty exciting stuff. They play 7th-ranked Tufts at 4 o'clock Saturday in Columbus, Ohio. They've already beaten 2 teams that I think were ranked in the top 10 in St. Thomas and Texas Tyler. So why not 3?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I just went up to Waverly earlier this morning, and it's really a neat story. They lost in their conference tournament, got an at-large bid, kind of made a Cinderella run. You know, they had to beat 2 teams in true road games and then beat Tyler to get to the Final Four. But part of the deal is they have a couple key players that are getting healthy at the right time, and just a group that's really playing well together. And during their tournament run, I've looked, they've led throughout the majority of it. They really haven't been in a game where they haven't kind of been in control. And I think they kind of always had that talent, and now they're just getting healthy at the right time. And it's a unique deal. You've got these twins, Katie and Christy Summer. They're out playing a softball game in Florida, and they got pulled in the middle of that game to go back and rejoin the basketball team when they found out they were going to be in the NCAA tournament. Kaylee Cladovo, she qualified for the national indoor meet in the high jump, set a school record, gave up a chance to compete in that to play basketball. So, you know, it's kind of unique in the sense of D3 sports. You've got a lot of multi-sport athletes at the college level that are out there contributing for this Wartburg team too.
I don't think very often you see them pulled out of various sports, though, at this time of year.
No,
you know, to come together for this basketball team.
One I've never heard of before.
And maybe that's part of the reason behind their success. You know, they are motivated to get as much out of this basketball season as they can, obviously.
And it's just a really competitive group. You've got Morgan Newendorf playing soccer, Missed some basketball games at the beginning of that, volleyball player, Aaron Jones, I believe. So yeah, it's just a really, really high competitive group that's come together.
When I did the spring, Wartburg Spring Sports Media Day, they actually, softball coach did not anticipate having the summer girls or twins down there with them in Florida. So I think they joined them late, and then they had to leave early too. So that's crazy. I mean, what a story to get all the way to Florida and, hey, we got a bid, you got to come back.
Yeah, you've been traded.
Yeah.
Traded you to the basketball team. All right, let's wrap this up with one last thing. Who's your pick to win the NCAA tournament? Nelly?
Who's my pick? That you caught me off guard. I'm going to go with Kansas.
Not bad.
I like Roy in North Carolina, seeing them getting it done.
You know, I'm thinking Kansas too. I mean, they've let us down so many times though, and they never seem to get win the big game when they need to. But on paper, they just look like the best team in the tournament to me.
That's why I don't think Kansas is going to win. North Carolina, I would pick, except I saw the woos of the Cloud Center. I don't know, just something not there. So I'm going to go for no reason I can think of whatsoever with Kentucky, just to be different.
That is different.
Sort of.
They're
All
pissed
right.
off.
I know.
All right, that's there you have it. That's all we've got for now. We'll try and do this again next week. In the meantime, you can stay on top of all the local and area sports action in our print editions and at WCFcourier.com.